Sailors take warning. Viva la pollo! Chick 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 chick. So a neighbor of mine just gave me this watermelon because she wanted to see what my birds would do with it. So I'll leave half here for the geese and I'll feed the other half to the ducks at the end of this video. She's such a sweet neighbor. See that right here? That's our coyote cam. We got 2 of them set up looking for coyotes. So last night I had a real hassle trying to get the geese into the chicken tractor. Like I was able to fill up the first 2 chicken tractors easily. This third one though was a nightmare. It took me about 20-25 minutes to actually get them in there. It was a pain in the neck. I think they sense what's coming and they're becoming much more stubborn lately. How are you guys? How's it going? What are you doing this morning? See if anybody goes for the watermelon. A couple of videos ago, I was talking about raising geese in like a more suburban setting, like a suburban house with a small lawn. And I talked a lot about how it's very feasible. And that is very true. But I did get a lot of messages from you guys talking about how I must be the worst, most inconsiderate neighbor in the world. Because if I thought that the noise level from the geese was acceptable, I have completely skewed perception on what's okay and what's not okay in a compact living environment. And admittedly, it's true. I don't necessarily have the best barometer for what's okay to do in a neighborhood and what's not. But since I live here in the middle of nowhere with plenty of space around us, it's not that big a deal. Plus, I have some of the best neighbors I've ever had in my entire life who live around here, whether it's Fran or Frank and Patrice or Cody and Kate. Like, I've got some great neighbors here and they're very understanding. Oh look, geese are starting to eat the watermelon. How are you liking it, guys? What's the review? You're eating the wrong part, you know, right? The whole topic of neighbors and living with neighbors got me thinking about, you know, my best, worst, most interesting neighbors of my life, because I've lived in a lot of different places. I've lived in cities before, I've lived in suburbia before, and it's led for some interesting neighbor experiences. Some notable neighbors I've had have included my buddy Keith. So Keith, he used to actually live next door to me in Boston. And Keith, for a lot of you guys who listen to our podcast, he's the one who actually wrote and performs our theme song. It's got a soul. Yeah, that's the stuff. This hero farm. Oh, and another interesting neighbor that I used to have, you guys know the actress Michelle Williams? You know, the one who was in like Dawson's Creek and a whole bunch of indie movies? Well, I actually used to live next door to her in Brooklyn. You know, she wasn't around a lot, but she was really nice, the couple of interactions I had with her. So I guess that's not much of an interesting story. But other neighbors I've had. I used to live down below underneath like an older woman, and she had like a crazy amount of cats. And by crazy amount of cats, I mean more than 30 cats. It was a 3-story house in Boston, and we lived on the first floor, me and a bunch of friends of mine. She lived on the second floor, and she kept the cats on the 3rd floor, and there were lots of them, and I used to have to bring like cat food and kitty litter up for them to help out, and oh man, it was the most sanitationally horrible thing I've ever had to experience. I actually even think that that experience itself toughened me up for the farm work and the gross stuff I have to deal with here on the farm. But far and away, the worst neighbor situation I ever had was when I was living in Hartford, and the worst neighbor was me. So I have these nuts, they're beech nuts right here, see them? Oop, that's just a receipt. I was picking some last night when I walked by a beech nut tree. Let me see if these guys like them. I got a whole bunch in my pocket. So as I talk about this wacky dream of sometime making my own foie gras, I wonder if somehow nuts like beech nuts might play an equation, because they fall this time of year and they might fatten these guys up. They're doing some damage here, they seem to like it. When I was living in Hartford in like my mid-20s, and I was living in this old house that was broken into 3 apartments, there was sort of this rotating cast of folks who lived down in the 1st floor, this older African-American woman who lived on the 2nd floor, and clumsy old me living on the 3rd floor. So when I was talking to the landlords about renting the place, they were kind of like, hey, you know, we're really excited to have you here. We think you're gonna make a great tenant. Just the one thing you need to know is that the woman who lives below you is Miss Marion. And Miss Marion, she can be a little bit particular. So, you know, just be polite to her, be friendly, and things should be fine. I should have taken this as a serious warning. So on the day that I was moving in, Miss Marion sees me and a friend of mine helping me move all my stuff up the steps. And she's like, ah, so you're the new tenant, huh? And she's kind of like gruff. And I was like, yeah, hey, I'm Morgan. Nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. Trying to be my dumb, dopey, friendly, affable self. And she kind of just like harumphed me. I was kind of like, all right, whatever. Maybe she just takes a little while to warm up to people. I mean, you know, I'm a stranger. I'm now going to be living directly above her. You know, the first couple weeks, things go by without incident. You know, I'll see her going up and down the stairs or in the back parking lot where we both parked our cars. And, you know, I try to say, hey, Miss Marion, and be very polite and friendly. And she just like kind of would always have a scowl to me. It's not like I need to be best friends with this lady, so it's no big deal, right? I think this part of the story requires a little explanation. While I try to be very considerate, I'm also epically clumsy, like ridiculously clumsy, like the clumsiest human being on the face of the earth. Given the fact that this is an old apartment, hardwood floors, I'm on the 3rd floor, she's on the 2nd floor, it's not like there's a ton of insulation there. She can kind of hear every move I make. You know, I might stumble in the middle of the night while going to the bathroom, or I might trip over something, or I might drop something while I'm washing dishes. Well, after a little while, she started to really wig out from the sound. Every time I drop something, or every time I might come home late from being out with friends, like I would hear her start yelling and like cursing me. It was like almost like she'd go on these like 10-minute monologues, like, I hear him upstairs, I can't believe what he's doing, he's gonna get this, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, geez, all right, lady, whatever. You know, I live here, I pay rent, screw you. I was trying to be a nice guy, but all you've been is rude. And so that's when my accidental clumsiness and the occasional noise really started to ramp up and stop being so accidental and stop being so occasional. I started being a horrible neighbor, and it started to be like kind of a version of psychological warfare. And let me just admit, I'm really embarrassed about this, by the way. So one night around, I don't know, 8 o'clock at night, I was getting ready to cook dinner, and I actually like dropped a pan that I was getting off of a hook. And that's when she wigged. She just started banging on the ceiling, my floor, and screaming. And I went down to her and I said, lady, what's your problem? And she went on this rant. That rant went on for like 20, 25 minutes. Well, the next morning I got a call from my landlord, and she said, what did you do to Miss Marion? Because she's threatening to leave and she's saying it's all your fault. And I was just very honest with my landlord, and I said, hey, listen, you know, she was yelling at me and screaming at me and being very rude. I wasn't trying to be too noisy, which is not exactly true. And all she's done is being a jerk. I'm paying rent just like she is. what the heck? My landlord, she was a very nice lady, she said to me, well, you know, Miss Marion has lived there for a very long time, and she's seen this whole neighborhood change. And yeah, she can be a little bit grouchy and a little bit crotchety, but she's a very good woman when it comes deep down to it. Well, given the fact that I, from a religious and cultural perspective, I'm half Jewish and half Catholic, guilt just sort of drenches out of me. And after talking to my landlord, I really started to feel guilty about the whole situation with Miss Marion. Feeling all of this guilt, I went downstairs and I said, hey, look, Miss Marion, I just want to apologize. I feel like we've gotten off to a bad start. I really just want to be your neighbor. I don't mean you any disrespect. I don't mean to be rude. Yes, lately I've been very inconsiderate. And she just looked at me, insulting me, scowling at me, screaming at me, telling me to move the F out. And so I just shrugged my shoulders and left. And as I was walking away, I realized that, hey, look, this is what it is. She feels the way she feels. You can't control that. All you can do is work on being a better neighbor. Even if she wasn't gonna be polite to me. I stopped being so rude, I stopped being so noisy, and over time, things got a little bit better. I mean, it's not like we were ever best friends or anything after that, but we ended up coexisting and living together like that for about another 5 years before I left Hartford to move to New York. If you want to talk about worst neighbors, I was definitely the worst neighbor. Oh, look, they're really making a dent in this. You guys like the watermelon, huh? Well, let's see if the ducks like the watermelon. Release the Kraken! That didn't go as planned at all. Pablo was watermelon blocking us. Oh well. You guys are gonna think this is the greatest thing ever once you try it. I swear. That's a no, huh? It's a hard no. I think I just heard the little guy quack. So maybe she's a little girl. I thought that noise I heard was just like a little bit of tiny, tiny quack. Let's go back to the replay. You know, girl, if you're a hen, that means I can keep Mundungus and Yellowneck one more year.